But of these 19, Trevenant and Gorgeist can only be obtained by trading. So in my previous video, some of you guys pointed out that Trevenant can actually be caught on route 20, and what I said about it was wrong. And to be honest, I can confirm that I was just testing you guys. No, I wasn't. G'day legends, today we're going to be attempting a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Ultra Moon with flying types only. The gist of a hardcore Nuzlocke are that a Pokemon that faints cannot be used again, I can only catch the first flying type Pokemon in each area, items cannot be used in battle but held items are okay, I must play on a set battle style, and the level restriction is the next Kahuna's best Pokemon or the final Elite Four member's ace. In Ultra Moon we can get a total of 30 different flying types, but Salamence and Dragonite are far too strong, so those big boys will have to sit out here. No Crobat because I used it like 2 videos ago. Scyther and Emolga can only be caught in the post game, and Braviary is exclusive to Ultra Sun, so they're a no-go. We can also only use one of Drifloon or Honchkrow, and even though I love Honchkrow, I've never really used Drifloon before, so I'll use it in this run. That leaves us with 23 different Pokemon to use, but most of them are weak. Adopt a quality over quantity mindset, if you will. And with that all being said, let's jump right into the video. We begin the run by picking up a Rowlet from Professor Kukui and named her Algebra. The beginning rival battle is a typical cakewalk, as we then make our way towards the ruins where we save a Cosmog named Nebby and head off to Route 1 where we can get our first encounter Peck, who we caught and named Pekka. On the way to the festival, we meet these goons in their techno dancing outfits and have another lopsided victory against Hau. Once we'd made it to Howloli City, we had a battle against Ilima, and I buggered this one up big time. So it was going swimmingly against Yungoos as we set up some workups and took it out with Leafage. Then in comes Smeagol, who, in the moment, I thought we'd taken down to potion range, but it was a mistake because Ilima had already used this potion on Yungoos, and as you can probably guess, I paid for this mistake in full. Yeah, laugh at me all you want, but you know what, we just gotta move on. And move on we do to the patch of grass right next to where Algebra was taken down to get another team member in Wingull, whom we named Bagel. As we head towards our first trial in Verdant Cave, Pekka evolves into a Trumpeak. We can also get our next encounter here on Route 2, Spearow, who we caught and named Tradebait, because now we're heading straight for the Pokemon Center here on Route 2 to trade Spearow for a Hawlucha named Cha. Moving on to our first trial, and as you can probably guess, with Char in our team now, this trial was a walk in the park, and it'll probably be the easiest for the entire run. So, off we go now to Mele Meadows to catch a Dandelion and Santa Claus before having another battle against Hau, one in which we completely crush him with Char. Afterwards, we are told by Professor Kukui to go take on Kahuna Hala, and take on Hala we did, but as expected though, this battle was relatively straightforward. I work up and pluck one-shot Smart Shop in Makuhita, and last is Crabrawler, who takes 2 hits but goes down all the same. Before we move on, I quickly went over to Howloli Cemetery to catch this balloon and named it Bye Bye. We then do what I think is a ripper minigame in Mantine surfing to get to Akala Island, and once there we meet Dexio and Cena. But seriously though, what are you doing? They look better suited for dance shows than Pokemon games if you ask me, but in our battle against Cena, we took her out pretty easily, with Char sweeping through her entire team. Moving over to our battle against Hau, there wasn't much to note. I sent out Bagel first, but Brion was a bit too strong for her this early on, so I switched into Pekka to finish off the job. Hau then sends in his Pikachu, so I went into Char, who tanks an Electro Ball, and then takes Pikachu out with a single Brick Break. Noibat and Eevee were Hau's last 2 Pokemon, but they both go down to an Aerial Ace and Brick Break respectively. We then get a Metapod encounter on Route 5 and named it James Harden, before meeting this weird emo kid named Gladian. He then starts asking questions, so we gotta teach him a lesson for being too nosy. NANI? We started out the battle by setting up a couple of workups as we get hit by feint attacks. A single pluck is then enough to one-shot, and we realise that it was Zorua the whole time. Gladian then sends out his actual Zubat, but it too goes down to a pluck. Type Null is last, and I take a risk I probably shouldn't have, but luckily I didn't get punished as Pekka lives with 4 HP. I then sent out Char to finish off the lesson with a Brick Break. With that battle out of the way, we can move on to our next trial. This time it's the water one against Araquanid. Araquanid can summon Masquerain and Dewpider as its SOS partner, and I'm hoping it summons Dewpider, because with moves like Stun Spore, Scary Face, along with the ability Intimidate, Masquerain is really just that one person that no one likes. But I suppose most SOS totems are like that. It will also rain during the battle, hence giving this water bug a boost to its water moves, so that'll be lovely. But given that Char is flying and fighting, it should be able to take care of this battle without too much of a hitch. So we start the battle off with an Aerial Ace for just under half, as Bubble does about a third. Araquanid then obviously SOS's in a Masquerain, and just like that, our attack is dropped. We then bring Araquanid down to yellow as Masquerain paralyzes us. This forced us to switch into Macarena because if we didn't, Char would have been taken out. Macarena then gets sent down to yellow after a Bug Bite and Bubble. I was relatively sure we'd outspeed, and we did, but Air Cutter just falls short of taking out the totem, and with that, we lose Macarena. We then sent out P.E.K.K.A, but she gets hit by a Stun Spore and Bubble, which takes her around to yellow before she could take out the totem with a Pluck. With our health low, I decided to not take any more unnecessary risks, and switched into Bye Bye to finish off the job, and that's our first trial done on Akala Island. We can now get an encounter at Brooklet Hill in Surskit, who we named Skit. As we make our way towards our next trial, we help out this little cutie named Harpu from some Team Skullgrunts. We can now get a couple of new team members. First is Magikarp over on Route 7, who we named Fish, because only gods deserve such a name. And second is Talented, the fledgling at Bella Volcano. Man, that was cringy. Next up is Totem Marowak, and this is where you can begin to tell that these island trials are some of the most unfair Pokemon battles you'll ever see. Not only does Marowak start off with increased speed, but it also holds a Thick Club, which increases its attack. And just to add to the theatre of it all, it SOS's only a Salazzle, who has 111 base special attack and 117 speed. Yeah, this battle isn't going to be fun, but with our newly evolved Bagel, we may be able to get through this trial without too much damage. So Totem Marowak starts off the battle with a critical Flame Wheel. Honestly, the RNG in this game is just so incredibly terrible, and to top things off, it SOS's a Salazzle and uses Detect on the next turn. This allows Salazzle to use Torment, so we're forced into using Air Cutter as Bagel is taken down to just 11 HP. I then had to make the hard decision to sacrifice Bagel because switching into anyone else would be suicide. So here we go into Charm, and I decide to use Aerial Ace on Salazzle before Marowak because I didn't want to risk it using Detect. We do manage to take out Salazzle, but Marowak obviously doesn't go for a Detect and hits a Flame Wheel. It does use Detect on the next turn however, but it was simply delaying the fact that this trial is over. But it came at a cost of a Bagel. Making our way over to Lost Jungle for the next trial, we get a couple of evolutions, including Talented to Fletchinder, Fish to Fish, and Skit to Masquerain. We also meet the Techno Goons again and our boy Colress, but can I just ask, what is with that coat, my dude? Actually, this reminds me of something, but I just can't put my finger on it. Anyway, he gives us the TM for Flame Charge, and we head off to our next trial. Now, if you've played Gen 7, you know that even if you have the type advantage against Totem Lurantis, it won't really matter, because this battle is so incredibly cheesy, in that Lurantis has Synthesis, in addition to its strong 90 base defenses. But that's not all, because both of its SOS Pokemon have Sunny Day, so Lurantis will restore even more HP than usual. Additionally, Kecleon has Ancient Power, whilst Comfey has Floral Healing and Flower Shield to heal and raise Lurantis' defense. It might sound like I'm ranting on a little bit, and it's because I am, just to express how annoying this battle can be. So how did this battle go? Well, it was about exciting as watching paint dry. A couple of Air Cutters to bring Lurantis down to yellow, then bang, Synthesis. To be honest, this battle wasn't very difficult, it was just very annoying. So after about half a century we finally take care of Comfey, and Lurantis quickly phones a new friend in Kecleon because it can't beat us one-on-one. Regardless, with Skit down on health, I decide to switch into Fish as we cop a Neck Scissor and Dizzy Punch. We then use Leer to lower their defenses before switching into Charp, who is previously injured from the Sudowoodo battle before this trial, but tanks a Solar Blade and Dizzy Punch anyway. We then take out Kecleon on the next turn, and Char hits level 28 and learns Flying Press. Lurantis decides to set up another Solar Blade, so here I go for a Roost to heal up, before finishing off Lurantis, with a couple of our newly acquired Flying Press, and with that, we've been all 3 trials on Akala Island. Before going over to Olivia's joint, we can get a couple of new encounters. namely Hoot Hoot in Lush Jungle, who we named Me. Why? Well, because at this point I've basically become nocturnal. Gotten about 2 hours of sleep in the last 2 weeks. Anyway, that's enough about me. We can also catch a Mantike on Route 8 and named him Virgil Mantike, and a Remoraid who we need to evolve it at a later stage. Once we arrived in Coney Coney City, I headed straight over to Olivia's, and to my surprise she leaves us a love letter, asking us to meet her at the ruins past Memorial Hill. Strange place for a date, but hey, to each their own. So before we head over, I brought the plume fossil and headed over to the very non-suspicious looking science lab. I mean, come on, you cannot tell me that you restore fossils. Okay, you restore fossils in this caravan. The fossil restored was Archon, and we named it Farquaad. We then head towards the destination of our date, but on the way we get a double evolution with Bye Bye becoming a blimp, and Pekka becoming a what the f***. Next we caught a Natu on Memorial Hill and named him Coffee, because I needed to keep me awake right now as I'm writing the script. We also had a battle against one of the Team Skull admins, Plumeria, and disposed of her Golbat pretty easily with Big Blast and Echoed Voice. She then sends in her Salandit, but it does quite a bit of damage with Flame Burst, so I decided to switch into Talented to finish off the job with Pluck and Quick Attack. Now it's time for our date, and to be honest, it was pretty spicy. We set up a Hone Claws on her Anorith, as Smackdown does about a third, and then take it out with a single Flying Press. Out next is Lily, but it too was dealt in a similar fashion to Anorith. And last is Olivia's Lycanroc, but she surprisingly goes for a Bite instead of a Z move, which allows us to finish off the battle with an all-out pummeling. And that's the end of the date, unfortunately. We then get brought on a nice tour of the Aether Foundation, a place that cares for the future of Pokemon, and I'm sure there's nothing shady at all going on here. Anyways, during our tour we meet this weird thing, and it took some beating, but we were eventually able to take it down and make our way over to the third island in Alola, along with good mate Hao. For now at least. We are then challenged by Hao once we arrived at the island, and we start off with Fish and use Lee right off the bat, but bite on the next turn there's absolutely nothing. We then bite again and take Beyond down to just under half, but a Z Power Hydro Vortex takes us under half as well. Though after another couple of bites we are able to take Beyond down. Hao then sends in Raichu, so I switch into Bye Bye, who cops a massive Psychic, and for some reason I thought we could tank an Electro Ball on the next turn. But clearly that wasn't the case.
Nice.
So next I decided to send out Pekka, who surprisingly gets hit by Psychic for about 2/3, as our Z move doesn't even do half. So as I'm desperately searching for a way to keep our team from being completely wrecked, I decided that the only course of action here was to let dear old Pekka go. We then sent in Skid, and Raichu's Psychic once again does huge damage as Bubble Beam barely does anything. Here I decided to take another gamble by going for a Quick Attack, but it barely doesn't KO as Raichu claims its third victim of our team already. Next up is Talented, and finally a Quick Attack is enough to end the massacre that had just occurred. Hao then sends in his Tauros, and Horn Attack nearly one-shots as Ember did close to nothing. But strangely enough, Hao decides to switch into Flareon as we bring in Char. We then go for a Hone Claws, but Five Fang does huge damage, so I went in for a Flying Press on the next turn, which luckily is enough to KO. In comes Noibat, but a single Aerial Ace takes it out, and once again Hao sends in his Tauros, and nearly takes out Char, but we live on 8 HP to end this demoralizing battle with Flying Press. This battle just went from bad to worse, and afterwards Hao thinks giving us a Lycanium Z will be a sufficient apology. But as the old sports saying goes, you gotta have a short memory. We have to now go over to the Pokemon Center to drop off the Fallen and pick up 3 new team members, those being Farquaad, Coffee and James Harden. We can also catch a Ledian in the Mallee Garden, whom we named PC because that's exactly where it's going. We also do a little bit of training and Coffee evolves into a
Wait a minute!
Yes, get excited because Algebra has returned. We can now get 2 more encounters, the first one being a shiny Corviknight, who we named Beans, and the second being Minior, but it knew self-destruct, so unfortunately no Minior this time around. So Totem Togedemaru you could say is similar to Totem Marowak, in the sense that they both have a Protect variant in Spiky Shield and Detect, which tends to give the SOS Pokemon a free hit on you. Speaking of SOS Pokemon, both Skarmory and Dedenne are tricky to deal with Skarmory knowing Stealth Rock, and since we only have flying types, it doesn't make switching in Pokemon a very appealing option. Dedenne on the other hand has Charm, so our attack will be virtually non-existent once it starts spamming it. Since I taught Fish Bulldoze though, we'll have to hope that it can bail us out here, but because she is water and flying, we do run a high risk of losing her. Using Char is also an option, but with Spiky Shield and the defense buff to Togedemaru, even a Z-type fighting move may not be enough to one-shot. So Togedemaru starts off the battle by using Spiky Shield to get a free SOS call, which turned out to be Skarmory. We then get hit by a massive Zing Zap for big damage, as the defense buff to Togedemaru severely limited the damage output of Bulldoze, all the while Skarmory sets up a Stealth Rock. But here is where we lose another team member in Fish, as she gets off one last Bulldoze before going down to Zing Zap. I then sent in Char, and since he is part fighting, Stealth Rock doesn't slaughter us the moment we step onto the field, and we weren't going to play any games either, and went for an all-out pummeling straight away, and thankfully, it does finish off Togedemaru. Poor old Skarmory then hits us with a Torment, but it mattered little, because with a Hone Claws, a couple of Roofs and Flying Presses, we take out Skarmory and defeat the first trial hero on Ula Ula Island at the cost of a fish. Afterwards, I remembered that I forgot to catch a Noibat in Verdant Cavern, so I quickly went back to get ourselves a Noibat and named him Earpods. Heading back to Melee Garden, we have a battle against Team Skullboss Guzma. We start out with Beans and use Fly first up, which does a decent amount, just under half, as Razor Shell does just about the same. We then go for another Fly, which activates Golisopod's emergency exit and forces Guzma into his Masquerain, whose Intimidate lowers Beans' attack. Beans also gets flinched by an Air Slash on the next turn, so we're forced to switch out into Talented, as Air Slash does about 2/3. So here I decided to use our Fire-type Z move, which does take out Masquerain in one shot, and out again is Golisopod, but it goes down to a single quick attack. Next up we have a trial against Totem Mimikyu, and we get hit for about 1/3 by Shadow Claw as Steel Wing takes off Mimikyu's disguise. After that, I immediately went for a Steel-type Z move, which does about 3/4 of Mimikyu's health, as Shadow Ball and Will-O-Wisp do a number on Beans. So then I decided to switch out Beans for Talented, who gets hit by Shadow Claw and Feint Attack. But switching in here is pretty pointless, because we just went back and forth with Roost, and eventually I decided to go into Char instead and get brought down to under half. But luckily for us, Mimikyu misses a Play Rough on the next turn, which would have most certainly taken out Char, as Aerial Ace brings Mimikyu to red. I then decided that we needed to sacrifice someone here if we wanted to get out with minimal casualties, and so Virgil is the next party member to go down. This isn't ideal, but it had to be done. I then sent in Talented, whose Flame Charge manages to take out Mimikyu, but she is also taken down herself with Feint Attack. I then sent out Char again to finish off the trial with an Aerial Ace, but these mounting casualties are starting to take a toll on our team. But you know what, we still have ways to go and we just got to keep on moving. G'day everyone, Future Snoggu here, and before we move on I just wanted to address a really big mistake I made going forward. I accidentally thought that Talented was still alive, and instead of boxing her I kept her in the party, and even used her in one of the upcoming battles. I know it's a cardinal sin, and feel free to consider this a failed Nuzlocke at this point if you wish. I won't stop you. But there is a silver lining here in that she doesn't have a big impact on the final result of this Nuzlocke. She does go down pretty soon. And I do realise that time around. But still, I'm very sorry for this, and I'll make sure it doesn't happen again in the future. Anyways, to make it up to you guys, just leave a comment down below about an idea you guys would like me to have a crack at. And the one with the most likes, I'll definitely look at having a go at as soon as I can. Anyway, back to the video, and hope you legends still enjoy. Cheers! We now head off to the Ether House, but get told that a kid's Yungoos had been stolen by Team Skull. So we head off to Po Town, the location of Team Skull's hideout, to retrieve the stolen Yungoos, and have a pretty easy battle against Guzma in the process. Once we'd returned to the Ether House, we are told that Lily had been taken away whilst we were rescuing Yungoos, and this weird emo kid wants to start some more beef, so we had to teach him another lesson real quick. Though this was much closer than our last battle. Seems he did learn a couple new things. Next we have a battle against the kahuna of Ula Ula Island, Nanu. We start out by taking out his Sableye with a couple of Farquaad's acrobatics, but not before getting hit by a massive power gem. Nanu then sends out his Persian, as we switch out into Char, who tanks 2 power gems, and we instantly go for the all-out pummeling, which does take out Persian with one shot. This forces Nano into his last Pokemon, Rock, and with Intimidate and Char being low on health, I decided to go into Beans, as Crunch does about a third. Nanu then goes for a Swagger, but with some RNG luck, we push through the confusion and land a one-hit X-Scissor. We are then told by Gladion that Lily would most likely be at the Ether Paradise, so we head over and have another run-in with Ultimate Guzma. We start off the battle with Farquaad, and then Acrobatics once again takes Golisopod down to below half, so Guzma is forced to switch into Pinsir. With Pinsir knowing Stone Edge, I wasn't about to take any risks here, so I switched into Char, who tanks a Stone Edge pretty well, but Aerial Ace doesn't do enough for a one-shot, and another Stone Edge takes us down to 4 HP, as we were able to take out Pinsir on the next turn. Next out is Guzma's troublesome Vikavolt, so I decided to bring in Algebra in hopes that we could tank a Thunderbolt, but we don't, and down goes Algebra. I then go into Talented, and a Fire-type Z-move doesn't even one-shot Vikavolt, as Talented gets taken down with a single Thunderbolt. Next in is Farquaad, and he manages to take out Vikavolt with an Acrobatics, and Guzma's down to his last 2 Pokemon. But they both suffered the same fate as Vikavolt, and with that we move on to our battle against Lusamine. To begin, we take out Clefable with a couple of Steel Wings, as Psychic barely tickles. Lusamine then sends in her dangerous Lopunny, who starts off with a Fire Punch, as we go for Fly, which does about a third. But we needed to take out this Lopunny ASAP, so I decided to use our Z move right here and now, which does finish off Lopunny, as Lusamine strangely went for Dizzy Punch. Next out is Milotic, so I decided to sacrifice PC here, but he does manage to get off a couple of Mark Punches, before getting blown to smithereens by Hydro Pump. I then go into Char and use Flying Press, which does over half as we get hit by an Icy Wind and have our speed dropped. Once again, I had to make another difficult choice to send in James Harden so that we can get a safe switch back into Char. We then finish off Milotic with another Flying Press, and next is Lusamine's Beware. So I decided to switch into Farquaad, who tanks a Zen Headbutt and lands in Acrobatics, which surprisingly does under half, as another Zen Headbutt brings us down to 6 HP. So I decided here to go into Earpods for his debut battle, and he didn't disappoint. He eats the Zen Headbutt and finishes off Beware with an Air Slash. Last is Lilligant, but come on, what's it going to do to a Noivern? And so, because Lusamine can't take an L, she runs off with Guzma to who knows where. Hope she doesn't annoy some super strong legendary, eh? Now we're off to Pony Island, the last island on our adventure, and here in Seafolk Village we can pick up a free Aerodactyl named Jezza. We can also get another encounter over at Executor Island in Tropius, who we caught and named Trooper. Though as we're making our way through Vast Pony Canyon towards our next trial, Char does unfortunately overlevel, and thus we need to switch him out for Santa before our next trial. Next up is Totem Kommo, and we start off with Trooper to use Bulldoze so that Kommo's speed can be lowered, as Poison Jab does huge damage. Kommo then SOS's Noivern, and here we had to sacrifice Santa so that we can get a safe switch in into Jezza. We also pulled out our Flying type Z move right away, and unfortunately barely leave Kommo standing as Thunder Punch nearly takes out Jezza. And you guys can probably guess what happens, right? Yep, there had to be another sacrifice. This time it's Trooper's turn. This does allow us to get a safe switch into Farquaad though, and we are hit by Noivern's Screech on the next turn, but we're able to take out Kommo with an Acrobatics. I then entertained the idea of switching out due to our defense drop, but remembered that Noivern has no physical moves, so we finish off the trial with a Rock Slide. We then move on to some Ruin whose name I've forgotten, and surprise surprise, Lusamine did go and annoy some legendary named Necrozma from who knows where. Lunala then gets beaten up and merges with Necrozma, and now we have to clean up this mess. Which we do, but not without our fair share of heart attacks, as Moongeist Beam nearly took out Jezza, but a couple of crunches did the job. Afterwards, Necrozma runs off somewhere and we have to chase it. Before we do that though, I went back to Route 3 to catch ourselves a Vullaby and named her Big Baby, before evolving it into a Mandibuzz. We also got a Focus Sash from a Dancer, and also did some Mantine surfing. Why? Well, to collect some BP and reteach Farquaad Endeavour, and you'll see why in just a tick. Now we can finally take on Necrozma, but this time in its Ultra form. I gave the Focus Sash to Farquaad, and as soon as Necrozma used Power Gem to take us down to 1 HP, We hit it with an Endeavour. Now we had to sacrifice someone, and it had to be me. I then sent in Beans, who has Sturdy, but we didn't even need it, and take out Necrozma with a Night Slash. And with that, we've saved the world. It's time for the last trial now, but before the trial I had to box some of our team members because they'll overlevel far too much. But let's be honest, we only really need Beans for this last trial anyways. So we start off the battle against Mina with a whole bunch of double teams, and even though Ribombee Z-move gave us something to sweat about, our own flying type Z-move is able to one-shot her Ribombee, and now it's time for the totem. But I said it once and I'll say it again, all we need here is Beans, and she carried us through this trial with ease. With this done, we've now defeated every island trial here in Alola. Before moving on to the Pokemon League, we have two more battles. First we had to take care of little island Kahuna Hapu, but we managed to set up 3 nasty plots on her Golurk, who really couldn't do much against Big Baby, and it was game set and match after that as we swept through the rest of Hapu's team. Though it was pretty close since Big Baby is relatively slow. We then had another battle against Gladion, but with the super creative use of Double Team by spamming it, we were able to grind out this battle with some Super Fangs, Air Slashes, and Roosted whenever we were in danger. Checking out the team before the Pokemon League, we still have a glaring weakness against electric types. But for most other weaknesses that Flying does have, we do have decent coverage. I also taught Char Sword Stance at the Move Tutor and brought the team for Stone Edge to teach the Jezza. As you can see, we got pretty stiff with the natures on Farquaad and Char, but that's how the ball rolls sometimes, and we got to deal with it. Anyway, let's get on to the Pokemon League. First up we have Elite Four Kahili, and we start off with Jezza, who manages to one-shot Kahili's Braviary with a single Stone Edge. Out next is the Hawlucha, and a Throat Chop does about a third as we go for Flying, which also takes out Hawlucha in one shot. Kahili then sends out her own Mandibuzz as we go for a Stone Edge again, but miss, and Jezza gets confused by Flatter. Luckily though, on the next turn we push through confusion and land Stone Edge for only about half as Brave Bird takes Jezza down to yellow. But with the threat of confusion and another Brave Bird here, I didn't want to take the risk and switched into Farquaad instead, who tanks a Brave Bird comfortably. Farquaad is then able to take out Mandibuzz with Rock Slide, and this forces Kahili into her ace, Toucannon, and goes for a Beak Blast, but Rock Slide is too much to handle. Last is the Fire type version of Oricorio, and with its 4 times weakness to Rock, it never stood a chance. Next up is Acerola, and looking at her team, the only real threat here is Frostlass. With its good speed and decent special attack, its ice moves will be a problem. It also means that we can't just sweep the team with Big Baby, because she is slower than Frostlass. Big Baby does have high special defense though, but that's too big of a risk early on in this Pokemon League to take. So I think we'll start off with Beans here because of its part steel typing, and we shouldn't get one shot by Blizzard. Hopefully we'll be able to take care of Frostlass and let Big Baby do the rest. So we start off the battle with a Night Slash on Acerola's Bayonet, which does about 2/3 as Shadow Claw doesn't do too much. We then take out her Bayonet on the next turn with another Night Slash, but not before getting hit by a Screech. Acerola then sends in her Frostlass and goes for Confuse Ray, but Beans clutches it and breaks through the confusion to land a Corkscrew Crash, which does do enough to one-shot Frostlass. Next out here is Delmars, and I don't know why, but I was overthinking a little bit about whether we should bring in Big Baby or not, but ultimately I did keep it simple and pull the trigger, and Shadow Ball did barely anything. We then set up a couple of nasty plots so that we can sweep through the rest of Acerola's team, and whilst Delmars slams did more than I would have liked, we were able to eventually take it out with a single Dark Pulse. That was pretty much the end of the battle because we outsped both of Acerola's final Pokemon in Palossand and Drifloon, allowing us to take them both out with Dark Pulse, and just like that, we're halfway to the champion. Next up is Olivia, and the obvious approach here would be Sword Stance with Char and sweep her team. It would be nice if that was possible, but with Probopass having Sturdy, it'll be hard to execute. But it doesn't mean that we can't use this setup at all. We'll have to utilise Beans here to her fullest because she is part steel, meaning that Gigalith's Sandstream won't have an effect on her. This will allow us to stall until the Sandstream is over to allow Char to take over the battle, and hopefully Probopass doesn't set up too many Sandstreams in the process. So despite me saying all that, I start off with Char anyways, and spam some Sword Dances, but to my surprise, Crush Core actually does a ton of damage and even lowers our defense. So I had to take out Armaldo as it leaves us with only 25 HP. Olivia then sends in her Gigalith, but we take it out with a single Brick Break as the Sandstorm takes Char down to just 15 HP. Next is Lycanroc, but it suffers the same fate as Gigalith because only one Brick Break is enough to force Olivia to send out her Probopass. But with only 5 HP remaining, this forced us to send in Beans, and this battle was a massive grind. But we did get pretty unlucky of them, to be honest, as even though we set up some double teams, it just felt like Power Gem had 100 accuracy. Probopass even set up another Sandstorm, and to top things off, we get hit by a critical Power Gem. Well, I've just about seen it all at this point, and to be honest, it may not have mattered, but still, it's pretty annoying. Anyways, I then decided to send in Char, and he was able to take out Probopass with a single Brick Break. Last out is Olivia's Cradily, but with an all-out pummeling we were able to take it out, and now only one Elite Four member remains. So yeah, few things I want to point out here. Klefki is actually broken. With Prankster, which gives priority to status moves like Thunder Wave, we can't even set up Sword Stance with Char. Magnezone also has Sturdy, so we won't be able to take it out with a single move anyways, and we will probably get one shot with Thunderbolt or Flash Cannon if we tried. Oh yeah, and he also has a Metagross, so fighting moves aren't even going to be super effective. Yeah, we're in a bit of a pickle. But we had to do this battle at some point, and I guess now's the time. So we start off the battle with Farquaad, and luckily for us, Klefki does miss the first Thunder Wave as Bulldoze does about half. We do get paralysed on the next turn though, as another Bulldoze finishes off Klefki. Mullane then sends out his Magnezone, and I was hoping that we'd outspeed, but our minor speed nature cost us here and we don't. That was terrible by me, a gamble that I probably shouldn't have taken, but oh well, that's how she goes. Anyways, I then sent in Jezza and go for a Bulldoze that I taught it earlier, but it only does 3/4 despite Magnezone being 4 times weak to it, as we get nailed by a one-shot Thunderbolt. I then sent in Char and finally finish off Magnezone with the Brick Break. Next in is Metagross, so I'm assuming that he'll go for a Zen Headbutt here, so I switch into Big Baby. We hit Dark Pulse for about 1/3 as Meteor Mash raises Metagross's attack on the very first hit. And with that, RNG has officially done my head in. Anyways, another Dark Pulse forces Mullane into a full restore and we get hit by a huge Meteor Mash as Dark Pulse leaves Metagross in yellow. But with priority Bullet Punch on the next turn, Big Baby also kicks the bucket. I then sent in Char to finish off Metagross with a Brick Break, and out next is Bisharp. But with its 4 times weakness to fighting, we take it out easily. Last is Dugtrio, and I decide to take a punt by leaving in Char here, but he manages to take a Corkscrew Crash, and with all that pummeling, we were able to take out Mullane's last Pokemon. We pulled an absolute stinker there, messed up big time. Now we'll probably need a miracle to still beat this Nuzlocke with only 2 Pokemon. But you couldn't have written the script, because something extraordinary happened in the battle against Hao. We actually managed to... Yeah, nah, we got spanked. It would have been tough with a full team of 6, let alone only 2. To be honest though, since it was only my 4th Nuzlocke and my first loss, I did take a lot out of this run. From unnecessary sacrifices to bad calls, it was really a great learning curve. Regardless of the result, it was a lot of fun playing through Alola again, but also annoying with the 2v1 totem battles. And you know what, I definitely have to try this Nuzlocke again in the future. But maybe I'll use Salamence in the next run, because electric types are just far too hard to deal with. Anyways, that'll do it for the video, hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll catch you legends in the next one. Cheers!